Hi, Caitlin here with my favorite math curriculum that I actually used when I was a kid, and it aged well because I'm using it with my kids as well. So a little bit about myself. I am a music educator. I have a background in elementary education. I've been giving music lessons since high school, and I've been educating my own kids at home formally for the last 4 years, but kids learn from birth, so I guess for the last 8. So the math curriculum that I love is Saxon math, and I grew up using this. This is actually the teacher edition that my mom used. Math doesn't change a ton, so it's one of those things that, like I said, it kind of ages well, and we think it's fantastic. So this is a little bit about Saxon. It uses a spiral approach, so meaning that you will keep reviewing things that you learned. So you're like spiraling, right? Not spiraling out of control. Maybe we'll spiral upwards. So we keep revisiting the things that we learned so we don't forget them, and we keep building off of them. The kindergarten through 3rd grade, you're going to have a teacher manual like this, and then you are going to have 2 student workbooks of this size. So you'll have a part 1 and a part 2. You need both. They just divide it into 2, I think, so it doesn't get too thick and it's hard to turn. And then you'll also have a pack of flashcards. And for any of those grades, you can also get what's called a meeting book, which is like a very thin book that has a calendar for every month. And I use those definitely in kindergarten, but I have a big wall calendar that I use, and we work on patterns and counting and all of that. So I've kind of been dropping it with my youngest son because I feel like he's picked up on a lot of things by hearing from his older siblings and because of the wall chart that we use. So if you're just starting out, I would recommend getting it to at least see if you want to use it. So anyways, it's pretty simple. It's very straightforward. Your teacher book is scripted, and some people like that, some people don't. I probably use the scripting maybe 60% of the time, and sometimes I just kind of go off and do my own thing. But the beginning of every book will have the title of what you're learning in that lesson. So lesson 1 of 2nd grade, reading and identifying numbers to 100, identifying left and right. Usually like the first 10, maybe more, lessons are reviewing what you learned at the end of the previous year. Here it gives you all of the materials that you need, or it tells you what you need. So it'll tell you the page numbers that you're going to use in your meeting book, or the worksheets that you're going to do out of the student workbooks, any flashcards you need, any manipulatives that you need. It even sometimes says, like, do this much the night before, do this the day of, so that you're prepared for your lesson. Usually the things you need to do the night before don't take that long. So if you're like me and you don't look at this until you're just about to teach your child the math lesson, you're fine. You can whip it together pretty quickly. And then it will start by every lesson starts with like what would be calendar time in a public school setting, where you review the day of the week. Depending on the grade level, you're going to write month, date, year, maybe day of the week. You might review different types of counting, like skip counting or counting by hundreds, counting forwards, counting backwards, 2, 4, whatever it might be. You might review flashcards. You might talk about the weather, depending on your age and grade. So that's all kind of review, and then you get into the actual lesson. And like I said before, it's all scripted, so everything in bold is what you can actually say. So if you've never ever taught a math lesson before, you can do this, because you can pick it up and you can say, today you will learn how to read and identify numbers to 100. Like, you can do that. And then it says, show your child the 100 number chart with covered numbers. And then you say, this is called a 100 number chart. And so it really walks you through. So what I was saying before about using this maybe 60% of the time, it's because I learned from this math curriculum, so I kind of know the rhythm of it pretty well. I've also taught one child out of this book already, so when I come around to the second child, it's a little bit of review for myself too. So it goes through that. And if you're learning two things in the lesson, it'll break it up. Like here, you're identifying left and right. So that's broken up into the second part. And then I got to flip forward a little bit. If there's any worksheet stuff that you need to do, there's also going to be a little answer key at the bottom. And that's for your eyes only. Your child doesn't need to see it. But that's handy to have because then you don't have to spend more time than you need to checking over your child's work. You can just do a quick review of it and make sure that it makes sense. So most lessons, pretty much every lesson, you're going to have a worksheet out of this student workbook. There are 2 pages, or there's front and back for every lesson. And as a homeschooler, I do not use front and back except in kindergarten, and I will tell you why in a second. And actually sometimes in first grade. When I get to second grade, we do side A, and that's it. Unless I feel like my kid needs extra work before they move on to a new concept. But this is designed that you can also use it in a group setting. And so if you were like in a public classroom, this is the page your child would do at school. And then this side B, it's a similar page, but it's the page your child would do at home as homework. But when you homeschool, you don't have to do homework because unless you feel like your child needs extra work, that's what homework would be. So I usually skip side B unless, like I said, I think my child needs a little extra practice. At some point, you'll start getting some timed tests. Usually it's like, see how many you can do in a minute, or if it's, sometimes you'll have, I think 100 problems on a page, and then you might get like 5 minutes. For some of my kids, that has caused a lot of anxiety and not been helpful at all, so I've skipped the timed aspect of it and just said, hey, can you do the first 2 lines of this? Or can you tell me the answer to all of these? Just to make sure that we know and we're practicing. One of the things that I love so much about homeschooling is that I can tailor it to my child. And I can kind of do like, I'm forgetting the exact terminology, but I can create a custom education plan for each of my kids. And sometimes that means we don't do every single thing on the page. And that's really it. After maybe every 5 or every 10 lessons, there is what's called a math assessment. Here it is. A lesson assessment, and that's reviewing everything you've learned from the last assessment. We do those on Fridays, and it's kind of like our math test, but there's not really any pressure. It's just to see what you're remembering really well, and then also making me aware of what you might need extra work on in the coming week. So that's what it is. It's very simple. It's laid out extremely well. You will probably have to buy a couple or get creative with some math manipulatives because there is some hands-on stuff. Ideally, you have linking cubes, which are little cubes that hook together. You have some tangrams, which are the colored shapes, because you'll use those on some of your math pages. And you'll have a student clock where they can actually turn the hands of the clock to practice setting times. And you might want like play money depending on the grade. So there are some extra things that you would buy, but you can get creative with them. Like I said, usually like linking cubes are used to measure things or to help with adding and subtracting. And so you can use Duplos, or you can use rocks, or you can use fingers. you don't have to buy the manipulative to get by with it. I said I was going to touch on what I do with kindergarten and first grade. So I have checked out the kindergarten curriculum for Saxon, and it's a great curriculum, but it's extremely easy. When my kids get to kindergarten, it's way too easy for them. So I have used, if I'm going to use the kindergarten curriculum, I use it in preschool, and it covers like shapes and colors, 2-color patterns. It gets into simple addition, and it gets into skip counting, like 2, 4, 6, 8, and it gets into a little bit of clockwork. And the clockwork is probably the most difficult, but my preschooler can do it, so I'm pretty confident most preschoolers could, at least if you're walking them through it. So what I do then when I get to kindergarten, since we've already technically done the kindergarten curriculum, is I jump right into first grade, but I do only the first workbook for kindergarten. And I go through it at about half speed, so we'll spend 2 days per lesson, and we do side A of the worksheet one day, and then the next day we do side B. And then I know we're not going through too fast for a 5-year-old. We're not gonna, make it really stressful and frustrating, but we're still progressing. And so that has worked for my oldest 2. I'll be doing the same thing with my youngest this year. He did the kindergarten curriculum last year for a preschool, and he will do book 1 of first grade this year. And then next year when he's in first grade, he'll do part 2, and we'll still go through it at that slower rate. And then when he gets into second grade, he'll be right on track for math 2. And so I found that works well for my kids, but you can go through it at whatever speed you want. And then after third grade, Saxon still has math, but it changes format a little bit. You get a teaching textbook, and this is something that you can go through with your kid, or if they are reading well enough and you think they are going to understand things well enough, you can have them read through their math on their own and kind of do a little bit of teaching for themselves, and then you can go back and check through. This is not scripted like the other teaching textbook that I showed you, so it reads through a little more smoothly, and it goes well for a child to teach themselves. And so with this, you will actually have 3 different books. This is what you teach from. Your child will need a notebook to write their math out. So just like we did in high school, right? You have a notebook, you number it, and then you show your work and you write out what you have. And so at the end, so here for lesson 34, you're going to talk about multiplication tables. And then over here, there's a little bit of practice. So this would be like reviewing some stuff. This is some multiplication review. And then here is the problem set. And it looks like for this lesson, there are 25 problems. And this is my first year using this book for any of my kids. So this will be a new adventure for us. But I remember as a kid, when I demonstrated that I fully understood and had mastered a concept, I was allowed to kind of like do every odd numbered problem or every even numbered problem. And what that does with this is it skips over some of the repetition. Like you can see here, problems 13 through 16, they're adding and or subtracting double-digit or 3-digit numbers. And so if your child knows how to do that and they've demonstrated it, just let them do 2 out of those 4 problems, and just to get the practice in, because they're not learning a new thing. They just need to stay in practice so it doesn't get rusty. So that's the teaching textbook. You will need a notebook for your child to write with. And then there is also a test form or test book, and here's the actual front. you do a test after every 5 lessons with this. So it's just like the lower elementary grades, it's reviewing the things that you've learned. And then there is an answer key for the tests and the answer key for the textbook. And so you can pretty quickly go through and grade your child's stuff, and if you notice that there's like a particular kind of problem that they keep getting wrong, you'll start to see it pretty quickly, and then you can go back and review. So that's what I recommend for math. Saxon Math, it's worked great for me, and it's been great for my kids thus far. Hopefully that's helpful and gives you an idea of what Saxon Math is, and maybe it's something that you would like to give a try with your family as well. Thanks for watching.